okay? They miss a treatment window. The weather changes. They're a week later getting the second treatment in. Different factors, it happens, okay? A lot of the treatments that we use are temperature sensitive. Forecast changes by 5 or 10 degrees, and it can have a big effect on your bees. So those kind of things happen. I can also tell from some of the questions about how do I do a powdered sugar shake, how do I do an alcohol wash, and some of you aren't familiar with some of the testing methods. So like she said, if you will just Google or look at YouTube and search for powdered sugar shake or alcohol wash for varroa, you'll see oodles of videos. You can tell the ones that are homemade, which some of them are great. You can tell the ones that are professionally done, that are very detailed. Please look into that, okay? The Wisconsin honey producers on our website, wihoney.org, Kent and several others worked with the state to put together a best practices for varroa management in Wisconsin. I believe that's the title, right?
Yes.
Maybe I got a word out of order. But if you'll go to the website and go under the resources tab, it will lead you to that link. And a lot of the information that Anna shared with you is there. The Honeybee Health Coalition is a great resource for looking at different treatments or different time frames, different times of the season, things like that. So please look into that. And again, this is why we're networking. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. And what I really want to drive home to you is it all depends on you and your neighbor. I always tell people community treatment is very important. How you manage your single hive can impact other honeybees in a radius around that hive by 5 miles or more. Now, how is that true? Well, if your hive can at times forage up to 5 miles if it needs to, well, guess what a hive 10 miles away can be doing? Foraging up to 5 miles away. So now the radius of your hive overlaps with the foraging radius of that hive, and now hives that are 7, 8, 10 miles away, some of those bees could be interacting during robbing season, during foraging season, when things are a little bit slimmer and the bees have to go further looking for it. So, like Anna asked, is anybody living on an island? I don't believe so. Okay, you might think you are, but we are in a very concentrated part of the country. Northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, a lot of beehives that you know about and a lot you don't know about. So think about that, get to know your fellow beekeepers, and think about community treatment. Test monthly, okay? If you don't know when to start in May, okay? Just pick a day and start. Test, like she said, after you treat. Does anybody remember? It was on the screen. You'll see it in all the literature. What's the kind of magic threshold number? We're looking at varroa mites per 100 bees. So what's the magic number above which you better be thinking about treatment? 3. Okay?
I meant to mention that. I think we're moving more towards lowering that threshold.
Yeah. So here's what I do personally. Because sometimes I don't shake for 60 seconds. Sometimes I don't shake hard enough. I may not qualify on the shake gap or whatever. And so I always just conservatively say, you know what? If I add 1 to my number, where am I? So if I'm getting 0, 1, I'm feeling pretty good. But if I'm getting 2 and 3, I'm already thinking there's probably a few that I'm not shaking off. Okay? And so I know I'm over that number. Here's what you're going to find in August, folks. If you're a beekeeper and you've been doing this a while, you're going to get 7, 9, 17, 13. Even in hives that have those lower numbers, like she was showing you on the chart, there is a natural spike. And so if that's the first time you ever test for varroa, you're going to be overwhelmed. And remember, you're shooting for a 300 bee sample. The bigger the sample size, the more accurate from the brood nest. Not from your honey super, not from the entrance of the hive where it's easy. Get them from the brood nest. It'll be a little difficult. I love what she said. Start practicing in the spring so that you can just practice the whole routine of setting up your stuff, because it can be a little cumbersome. You're in a bee suit. You're not used to this. If you wait until the fall when there's 70,000 bees in a hive with 3 brood boxes, you just take all the honey supers off, the bees are a little more grumpy. Trust me, you'll be fumbling around. So get used to it. Get a system down, all right? And test after you treat. If you find that you need to treat, test afterwards to make sure your treatment was effective. I usually say within a week or two. Okay, maybe the next day or two may be too soon. It depends on the treatment and when that treatment's efficacy is at its greatest, when you're getting the biggest mic drop. A lot of people just think a sticky board is the way to go. A sticky board is a great thing to use in the first few days after you apply a treatment because you can see a huge mic drop onto it, knowing that, hey, I got a lot. But then do your sugar shake or your alcohol wash, I'd say a week or two after. Dan, is there a set time that you usually tell guys?
It varies depending on the treatment, but yeah, I think you're given enough time to run its course.
Yeah, let the treatment work and then come back and check. Okay, because you got to remember, where do these the Varroa spend most of their time? In the brood cells. So some of the treatments, most of them aren't killing the ones under those brood cappings. So a week, 2 weeks later, you got another population of mites out and about. And then backyard breeding programs. I get this all the time. As somebody who distributes a lot of bees from Georgia and California, we work with about 13, 14 different breeders. All of the breeders that we use are imploring, some of the VSH and Minnesota hygienic stock, those kind of things into their breeding programs, their breeder queens. But I always get these questions from smaller beekeepers. Well, I'm going to not treat because I'm going to try to find a bee that'll work for this area that's resistant to Varroa. You really need to understand what you're talking about, because are you in control of the drones? Are you in control of your neighbors? And are you really going to be able to do that? Just understand what all is involved. It's not that simple. Okay? With that, did anybody else, we'll take a minute or two, anybody else have any key points or one last burning question? If not, then maybe catch Anna before she leaves. If she's heading down the hallway, don't be like holding her up because they got to get on the road and head north. So, okay? Thanks again to her coming. Now, our next presenter is Hannah Gainsday from the Grattan Lab, University of Wisconsin, and she is going to talk to us about some current and upcoming research on honeybees here in Wisconsin, which is applicable to you guys in Northern Illinois as well. So with that, we're going to turn everything over to Hannah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks everyone for having me today. Can you hear me in the back? Great. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in my presentation because I have some handouts. So one thing I'd like to do, sort of a next step in my research, is collect citizen science data. And so I have two sort of programs to tell you about. One is a brand new collaboration we have with Penn State, with the Center for Pollination Research at Penn State, with Christina Grossinger, and it's a program called Beescape. And so right now it's in Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Indiana, and we just joined up with them, and we're hoping by the end of 2019 this will also be in Wisconsin. And so basically what Beescape does is it lets you map where your hives are, and it extracts land cover data, pesticide use data, and uses some modeling practices that we've developed over the past few years to tell you what is the forage like in your landscape, what is the pesticide load like in your landscape, and then you can use that to predict the success of the hives. So, like I said, it's not in Wisconsin yet, but we'll hopefully have it soon. If you're interested in learning more about it and being kept up to date, I'm going to pass this around. You can put your name and email address, and I'll take this at the end. And so to get this website to really work well, we need data from beekeepers so that we know if our models are accurately predicting the success of your hives. So hopefully starting next year we'll be able to start collecting data in this Beescape website from beekeepers. This is just showing you a little bit about this is what it looks like when you log in. It'll show you a map, you click where your hive is, and then this is just showing this is a land cover layer, so you can click on that and tell you what the different land cover types are around your hive. For the time being, this is not, like I said, it's not in Wisconsin yet. So for the time being, I have a data sheet. So if you're interested in contributing some data about your 2017-18 hive success, I'm going to pass this around too. You don't need to give this back to me today, you can send it back to me if you're interested. This is basically, I'm interested in looking at across Wisconsin, can we use landscape to predict how well your hives will do? So the information that's collecting is the location of your hive, your overwintering losses from last year, and then how you did this past summer. So feel free to take one of these as well.
How do you get the pesticide data?
So the pesticide data is a county level database that's available freely online. And so it's, right now, we're not exactly sure how well it predicts because it's at the county level. And so at the local scale, it might not be as relevant. But we're hoping to be able to use that county level data that's available to the public to use in predictions on regulations. So the question is, are we thinking of pesticides from corn and cotton? That's what the pesticide layer does. It reports how much of the corn, for example, in this county was treated with certain pesticides, and then we use that information based on the application. Does that answer your question? Yeah, the comment was they had a fill out from fungicide application in their area, their aviary in New York. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Are you guys tracking herbicides as well?
So the database that we have focuses mainly on insecticides, but research is showing that fungicides, for example, are pretty bad for bees, and herbicides, also they're finding that are also correctly. So I think we're going to try to figure out how to pull in some of that other data. Okay. So, and I'm happy to answer more questions about those data collection things as we go. So feel free to ask me questions about that as we go. As you are all aware, bees are very important. So 85% of all flowering plants and about 35% of crop plants require insect pollination. And bees are the most important pollinators providing that service. So another way of looking at this is saying that 1 in every 3 bites you eat is dependent on pollinators. And this is directly, so things like almonds, blueberries, apples, fruits that require insect pollination, but also things that indirectly require pollination, like dairy and meat, because the animals producing the dairy or meat are eating crops that require pollination, like alfalfa. And then there was an ad campaign a few years ago that I really liked that I think really illustrates this dependence on pollinators nicely. So this is a photograph of a produce department in a grocery store of what it looks like with pollinators. And then what they did is they went through the produce section and removed everything that requires pollinators. And that's what your choices would look like without pollinators. So I think it's a pretty good visual representation of how important bees are for our food system. And honeybees are vital to modern agricultural systems. So there are a number of reasons why current modern agricultural practices really depend on honeybees. Without honeybees, our current agricultural system would fall apart. So the reasons that honeybees are vital for this system is, first of all, they're generalist pollinators. So honeybees will visit lots and lots of different types of flowers. So they're not picky about what flowers they're visiting. They're relatively easy to manage. They live in boxes. You can pick them up, put them wherever you want, shoot them. They're easy to track. And then this works really well with modern agricultural systems. So you pick up the boxes and put them in the moving crop field when you need them. In systems like almond, for example, there's miles and miles of almond, and for the rest of the year, there's very little forage available for the bees. And so if the bees were there all year, they wouldn't do well. But with modern beekeeping practices, you can just pick them up and put them where you want. When the flowers are done, you move them somewhere else. But wild bees are also important crop pollinators. So for the past 15 years, I've been doing pollinator research, and I've mainly been focusing on the wild pollinators. There's some research showing that wild pollinators sometimes are providing the majority of the crop pollination services, but also that wild pollinators and honeybees often work well together. So honeybees might pollinate at certain times of day or in certain weather conditions, and the wild bees might pollinate at other times of day or in other weather conditions. So they work really well together. And there are 20,000 species of wild bees in the world, 4,000 species found in North America, and about 500 species found in Wisconsin. This slide just shows you a little bit of the diversity of the wild bees. And then just a couple of differences between wild bees and honeybees. Wild bees are mainly solitary, so there's no colony, there's no hive, there's no queen. It's an individual female with an individual nest, and most of them live in the ground. Their holes look almost like ant holes, and there'll be one female who lives in that nest. As I mentioned, there's a huge diversity of wild bees in North America. We only have one species of honeybee that we depend on. And then a lot of the wild bees are actually specialized pollinators. So my favorite species of bee is the squash bee, Peponatus prunosa, and they specialize in squash cucurbits, so pumpkins, squashes, cucumbers. And so if you have an apple orchard, that type of bee wouldn't really be very useful for you for apple pollination. But as you're also probably aware, pollinators have been experienced declines in the last 20 years. This is true for both wild pollinators and for managed honeybees. We don't know the exact causes of decline, but there are a number of factors that we believe are responsible for the decline. So that includes pathogens and parasites. So varroa mite is the biggest one that you know, but there are others. Pesticide exposure in our agricultural landscapes, and then loss of flowers on the landscape. And this is something that I think we don't think about as much, the changes in our agricultural landscape, but it's possibly one of those most important factors, because the floral resources on the landscape, that's what the bees are eating. And so as roundup ready crops have increased and the weedy floral species in field edges and roadside ditches have gone away, the bees have less to eat and a less diverse diet. And that's had a pretty significant effect on the health of the bees. And so the focus of my research is looking at how local and landscape level habitat influences wild and managed pollinators, mainly in agricultural landscapes. Those are supposed to shift a little. I'm not sure what happened. But so when I say local habitat, I'm talking about at the farm scale, so the field level. What is the floral resources like in the actual farm field where the target crop needs to be pollinated? And then the landscape scale, I'm talking about more of a range of 1 to 3 miles around the farm or around the apiary. And what does the type of habitat and arrangement of that habitat look like, and how does that influence the behavior and community of pollinators you find in an agricultural system? So I'm going to go through a couple of studies that I've done over the past years here in Wisconsin. The first one I'm going to talk about is looking at apple pollinators, and we're looking at how local floral resources in the orchard influences the pollinator behavior and the pollination services the growers are receiving. The second study I'm going to talk about is working with Wisconsin cranberry growers, and this was mainly looking at how landscape level natural habitat influences the community of wild pollinators in the cranberry marshes, as well as the effectiveness of honeybees to pollinate the cranberry. And the final study I'm going to talk about is my current research, which is looking at how the landscape surrounding commercial bee yards influences hive success in southern Wisconsin. So the first study is, I mentioned, with apple growers. And we're looking at both managed and wild pollinators. A little bit of context for this study. The apple growers, some of them keep their orchard sort of like a golf course. They like to get rid of all of the dandelions, either mow or herbicide, removing all of the dandelions in the understory because they're afraid that the bees are going to the dandelion instead of the apple. Other apple growers don't seem to care too much about what the understory looks like, and others would like to keep it clean, but they, it's a busy time of year in the spring when the dandelions are coming out, and they don't have a chance to. So what they want to know is, how is the presence of these dandelions influencing their apple pollination? And so in particular, we're talking about the management of dandelions in the understory. There are other flowers that could be in the understory, but dandelion is the main one that's blooming at the same time as apple. So this study was a 2-year study done at 24 orchards in southern Wisconsin. And at each orchard we had 2 treatment blocks. So on the left here we have our no-mow treatment, where we ask them not to mow or herbicide during the duration of the study to let the dandelions be at whatever the level of dandelions in that orchard would be normally. And then we had a mow treatment, and we asked them to mow as often as they could during apple bloom to keep the dandelion levels low. We then went and did observations of pollinator visits. We did timed observations in the orchards during bloom and reported how many wild bees and how many honeybees we had and how many non-bees we had visiting the apple blossoms in a 5-minute observation period per transect. After bloom was over, just after petal fall, we went and we measured early fruit set. So these are the little fruitlets you get right after the petals fall off. We would have liked to measure something more closely related to actual yield, but apple growers in Wisconsin pretty much all use a chemical thinner, and so they come through and spray the trees that cause the small fruits to fall off because they don't want more than 1 or 2 of these fruits to develop per cluster, and so the final yield numbers won't relate well to their pollination levels because they've gone through and artificially removed flowers that could have been, fruit that could have been fully pollinated. So I'm going to show you a couple of graphs here. We have on the bottom axis is the number of dandelions per square meter, and on the y-axis is the visitation rate. So in this case, it's the number of honeybees per minute. And what we found was that as the number of dandelions increased, the number of honeybees visiting apple blossoms also increased. When we look at wild bees, although the number of bees visiting per minute, the density of wild bees is much lower than the honeybees, we found the same relationship. So as the number of dandelions in the understory increased, the number of wild bees visiting the apple blossoms also increased. And so, if anything, the dandelions are making the orchard more attractive for the bees and bringing more bees into the orchard rather than distracting them from the apples. And then when we looked at fruit set, we didn't find any relationship between the dandelion density and the fruit set. I think apple is an extremely complicated system, and there's so many different variables that play into fruit set and yield that I think that's one reason why we didn't find a relationship here. The other reason is apple bloom is really, really short, and so we had like a 5 to 7 day window to collect all of our data on visitation rate, and so that very small snapshot on visitation by the bees might not be enough to really give us the information we need. So, yes?
Do you have any data on the varieties of the apples? Because, like, a Macintosh will bloom the first, and then all the different varieties along, and in about a 3-week period, you'll get fresh blossoms from all varieties of apples, not just on the honeycrisp.
Yep. So that's a great question. You said they asked about information on the varieties of apples because they sort of have a different bloom period for different varieties. And we do. The first year we were trying to get sort of diversity of what we looked at. So we visited all sorts of different varieties. And then the second year we decided in order to keep the variation as small as possible, we focused only more similar from orchard to orchard. So we felt like focusing just on honeycrisp was a way to reduce the variability due to other factors. And so our take home from this study was that the bees are definitely responding to local availability of floral resources. The more resources we had, the more bees we had in the orchard. So the next study I'm going to tell you about was my dissertation work with cranberry growers. I initially started this study interested in how the landscape influences the wild pollinators in the cranberry marsh. And so to do this part of the study, I set out pan traps. That's what these, they're on the upper left here. It's a plastic beer cup sprayed with a fluorescent paint, and so it's sort of a floral mimic. So to the bees, it looks like a flower, and that's why they go to it. And we set these down in the cranberry marshes during cranberry bloom to collect bees that are visiting the flowers as well. We then took the samples out of those traps and pinned them all and identified the new species. The sites where I had these traps, I worked with about 50 growers over 4 years of the study. And the sites fell on a gradient of very high woodland and very low woodland in the surrounding landscape around the cranberry marsh. So this is an aerial photo of the cranberry marsh, and this would be one of my lower woodland sites. And what we found was more woodland in the surrounding landscape resulted in a more abundant and more diverse wild bee community in the cranberry marsh. We found approximately 200 species of wild bees just in cranberry, which we were pretty impressed by, because cranberry seems like it's such a, it's grown in huge fields, and you wouldn't think that there'd be that many species just in one crop. But while I was working with the cranberry growers, they kept asking me about honeybees. I tell them what I found with wild bees, and yeah, that's nice, but what about the honeybees? How many hives should we bring? What's the best number of hives to bring to increase our cranberry yield? It's like, well, I don't know. So I figured out sort of the data that I wanted to, the data I felt I needed to give them the answer to that question. And luckily, cranberry growers keep amazing records. And so I collected data from 50 cranberry growers for 10 years on their cranberry yields and the number of hives per acre they had each of those years. And so this figure, I'm going to show you this figure a few times. On the bottom axis is the number of honeybee hives per acre. On the y-axis is their yield in barrels per acre. And I just want you to take a minute and look at that relationship. Maybe talk to your neighbor, say what you think you see there. Does anyone want to share what patterns they think they see here? So when we first looked at this data, we said, what's the relationship between the two variables? And what we found was there's a significant relationship. So it looks like it's increasing. We don't know what the maximum number should be here, but it looks like there's a pretty significant relationship between hives and yield. So the more hives you bring, the higher your yield is going to be. But since I'm always thinking about the landscape, I was like, well, maybe this is different depending on what the landscape is like around your marsh. But there's not a lot of work that looks at how landscape influences honeybees or influences the use of honeybees in agricultural systems. So there wasn't a lot of previous work to go from. So what I did is I overlaid the surrounding landscape. So I looked at I categorized the marshes high woodland or low